The Labour Party is extremely worried about Reform UK and the May the 1st elections. So we're going to cover a little bit of Labour's fight back, if you like, and the way that they're fighting back, particularly on the front of the NHS. Labour does stand behind the NHS, and most of the people in the UK do, me included. I love the NHS. I think it should be a service that's free at the point of service. But I also believe that we should be considering alternatives. So we're going to cover a couple of Labour's attack lines here today, one of which is a quite hilarious set of leaflets that have been distributed amongst a certain group of voters, particularly in Wales and other places. And we'll just start by highlighting Keir Starmer's positioning of how Labour's going to attack reform. They're very worried about reform coming at them from the perspective of immigration and all the rest of it. But really, Labour needs to fall back on its mainstay, which is the grand old NHS.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the NHS is the lifeblood of our country, and that's why we invested £25 billion at the budget, a record amount, and we're making it fit for the future through our plan for change. What a contrast with Reform, whose leader has said that those who can afford to pay should pay for our healthcare. Under Labour, the NHS will always be free at the point of use for anyone who needs it.
So just to reiterate what I said earlier, I am pro-NHS. I like the NHS. I like the fact that in this country it's universal, that everyone can have access to healthcare. I think that's fair, and it's something that is just a grand British tradition, so I'm all for it. What we'll do here, I just want you to show you the type of leaflets and the type of thing that's being sent to some voters on pre the May the 1st election. So we'll just start with this one. And this is quite a clever bit of political messaging. You have to hand it to the Labour Party. This is, if you read the writing on the bottom there, there's a company doing it on behalf of the Labour Party. So what the Labour Party are doing is they're using their funds and they're sending this out to this very clever marketing PR firm, whoever they are, and they've come up with this little campaign. So you'll see here the listings of your NHS bill under Reform. So if you do vote Reform, this is the type of bill that you can expect to get, and it goes through various costs. And you get to the bottom there, it's got a coronary bypass surgery. I mean, for £72,000 on a bill, that's enough to give you a heart attack and possibly need surgery after that. But we'll move on from that point. And another little leaflet thing here. So you'll see how this is made. It's made in the style of a receipt that you would get from the supermarket or something. Quite clever to do it like that, because it relays it into a deep part of our brain that we're used to seeing. So very, very, very clever political messaging there. You have to hand it to this company. They're not messing around here, and they're actually trying to show you different ways that they can attack you with this stuff. And here's some leaflets that were handed out in Wales, and as you can see on the second leaflet there, Reform plan to make you pay for things when you're sick. Quite striking imagery as well, those colours used there, and you'll see here that this campaign isn't messing around. That aside, I believe this is an unwarranted campaign because it's not really telling you the truth. You look at all of these types of, leafleting campaigns. I don't mind these leafleting campaigns and, political parties generally wanting to get their message out. But this is a classic misrepresentation of what Reform are actually proposing. Now, this type of thing is very clever, and it might be okay in the moment with a bit of back and forth between politicians on the television or even in Parliament, but the reality of the situation is more like this. So what you're looking at here is the actual manifesto from last year. This is from June 2024, but this is Reform's stance, and it's been reiterated over and over by Nigel Farage. And so as you'll see how Reform is coming at this, kind of, I would say, 75% like the rest of the main political parties. The normal stuff's on there. We've always had record extra funding, and that is correct. It doesn't really matter whether you're looking at the Labour Party or the Conservative Party. Successive governments have put loads into the NHS, and the thing about that is, though, when you're looking at the pounds that have been put in versus the results that come out, we're high up in terms of investment, and we're very low in Europe in terms of results. So places, in Europe, like for instance Germany, have far better results than we do with regard to like cancer care and things like that. And so the NHS does get enough money, in my opinion, to provide a half decent service, but whatever they're doing there isn't actually delivering as well as places in Europe. Now, what they're saying is they want to end doctor and nurse shortages. Yeah, that's all good. And use independent healthcare capacity. Yeah, this is all fine. Now, the big hubbub really is this tax relief. So, in essence, this is how it works in the UK and has worked like this for many, many years. There's, for instance, a company called Bupa. Now, you can go onto the Bupa website yourself now. If you go onto their website and you have a look at their care plans, you'll see that there's various levels of care plans you can take for an individual or for a full family. And indeed, you can pay, anything you want for healthcare. You can pay a few £100 a month and even more if you want. And for that, you can get an immediate appointment day or night. And you can do that over Teams or over the internet. So you can get appointment. You can get prescriptions sent to your door. You can get scans. You can get surgery booked in. You can pretty much do anything you want privately. But, private healthcare has been available forever in a day. So reform aren't really changing anything. What they're saying is, if you're going to pay for private healthcare, a lot of people do already, as I said, but if you are wanting to pay for that, are you considering doing that? Then what we'll do, we'll give you a bit of a tax break. Because what you're doing, you're removing stress from the NHS. So the people that are using the NHS, and that's myself included, we are using that service and it's under a lot of pressure. And so if you've got a rich person who wants to go and pay for private healthcare, then that's fine. Let the rich people pay for private healthcare. You know what that does? That takes pressure off my doctor. It takes pressure off my hospitals. And, for everyone in the country there, the more people that are encouraged to take private healthcare, the better, because it takes the strain off normal public services and the normal NHS services that most people access. And so what Reform are doing here, they're trying to tempt more people who might be on the edge there. They might be thinking, oh, well, I've got a few quid here and I quite fancied taking that, healthcare option with Bupa or whichever company it is. But, I don't know if I'm going to do that. Then, Reform come out and say, hey, how about an extra 20% tax relief? And that could be the thing that pushes a lot of people over. It makes it more enticing for people. And so all of this stuff people going on about, Reform wants to ruin the health service and do this and do that. I'm a health service user. I wouldn't want Reform to ruin our national health service. But Reform aren't going to be ruining our national health service. They're just really coming up with an alternative method to try and reduce the strain on the NHS, as well as putting into practice what the rest of the parties are doing. In addition to that, one of the things that they're actually guaranteeing is an NHS voucher scheme. So what they're saying is, if the NHS can't get you a GP appointment or, see a GP within 3 days, or a consultant within 3 weeks, or, an operation, whatever, within a certain amount of time, they'll come out with those timeframes. Then what you're going to get is a voucher to go and take that privately. And so these proposals for reform are quite normal, they're quite natural, and they're a good progression, I believe, in order to make people who have money and who don't mind paying for private healthcare to reduce the strain on the system. So, in future, if you're listening to people and they're talking about reform in the NHS, and the fact that Nigel Farage wants to ruin the NHS, in essence, they're talking complete and utter rubbish. Anyway, thanks very much for your time, I appreciate it.